Weekly update for Friday, November 10th. And real quick start out of the gate on Kickstarter. Cerebus Archive number 7. And many thanks to everybody who's participating with that one. And particularly all of the new customers we've got showing up thanks to the email address that we were able to put together with George Gatzis of Cerebus Downloads and Selfie and various other places that we had email addresses to draw on. And the real sudden burst of enthusiasm as soon as Sean Robinson had sent out that email blast. When was that? That would have been Tuesday, I guess. So yeah, very, very impressed, and many thanks to everyone. And I heard from Michael R. of Easton, Pennsylvania again. I've got 3 more questions. Number 1, the first comic art that you drew of Cerebus that you want to be put on the stamp for a Kickstarter campaign. There it is right there. Well, shouldn't that drawing have been with the first Kickstarter on page 1? Just saying. And yes, very, very definitely, it should have been there. I'm just happy that I caught it this time before we did stamp number 1. And I went, oh hey, you know what should have been on stamp number 1? And it would have been way too late at that point. Question number 2, have you penciled and inked anything since finishing the hardcover drawing on Weekly Update number 202? And that actually ties in with question number 2, or question number 3 as well. How is the right hand since you finished the hardcover drawing? And the answer to that is okay, good. The most important thing is hoping that I can keep the pain that's there where it is right now, a good half inch or inch below the joint. It actually seems to be moving even further down from there. As long as it's not in the joint, then I can do a certain amount of drawing. It's still painful, and I'm having same trouble with my eyesight as well. I mean, I'm 61 years old. I hate to break this to you, and you know, reading my King James facsimile Bible on Sundays. I used to be able to do that just with my plain eyesight, and now, just like Cerebus, I got the magnifying glass out so that I can read the text and the marginal notes, which are tiny, 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 tiny. And same thing's happening with my Kingdom Interlinear of translations of the Gospels into Greek, from Greek into English, and that's getting too small to read with the naked eye, so I've got my magnifying glass out for that. Don't want to get bifocals or reading glasses because I don't want my eyes getting accustomed to that. I want to keep them as sharp as I can for as long as I can. But interesting that you ask, have you penciled and inked anything since finishing the hardcover drawing on Weekly Update number 202? Yes, just this week I've started working on You Don't Know Jack, and doing notes for that for Sean Robinson, who's doing the tech digital side on it, and for Carson Grubaugh, who's doing the heavy lifting on the drawing. And what I've discovered is that there is a world of difference between doing the balloons on the Cerebus and Hell mock-ups, which is what I do with one of these archival pens. This is a 01. I use a 01 or a 03. World of difference between that and using the big boys equipment Gillot 303 pen nib in its stock, which you can see there. Gillott if you want to order them from somewhere. Gillot 303 flexible pen nib. And we can have a look at what it is that I'm working on and where I'm having trouble. Good example of comic art metaphysics in action that Studio Comics Press printed out these digital files for me that Sean Robinson had sent up from San Diego. And they printed comic book size on 11 by 17 sheets, which turned out to be exactly what was needed in order to have space for all of the corrections that I had to put on, just starting with the cover. Had to add the barcode, the credit names just under the IDW logo, and right down here in the bottom left corner, we had a Kubert font boo just going across the featuring the Spirit of Dave Sim block panel there. Oh, boo yourself becomes a running gag in the storyline. And I went, that really should be hand lettered. You can't really use the Kubert font for a sound effect. And that was a question of, is my hand up to it actually doing a sound effect, which is very, very different from doing a Cerebus drawing, which is pretty much a genetic memory. And boy, I gotta tell you, I've got the Gillot 303 pen nib here next to the sound effect so that you can see what size it is. 250% enlargement from what it needed to be. Figuring, well, okay, at that size I can make a few mistakes and you're not even going to notice it. And boy, oh boy, it was, the pen was jumping around in my hand and really not being remotely cooperative. Not only is it enlarged 250%, I was also using the magnifier that I've got on the drawing board, and still it was, man, I just can't get this pen to hold steady and do what I want it to. The second O, no, the third O there, I ended up having to cut out a piece of a white Avery label and stick it over it and go, well, okay, let's have another try at doing the right hand side of the O. At the end of the day, it looks good. So that was really the concern, was, okay, can I do a sound effect? But definitely a completely humiliating experience to have to take an hour and a half, 2 hours to do a sound effect that I probably would have knocked out in 15 or 20 minutes back in the day. And there you can see again with the Gillot 303 pen nib as a size comparison. That's how large the boo is going to be on the cover. And fortunately, when you're reducing something to 40% of its original size, it does cover up a few of the defects, and some days that's the best you can say. Okay, so it's really one of those, sorry Dave, you don't get to be Sylvester Stallone anymore, but you do get to be Burgess Meredith. Dame's weakened legs. Anyway, this is something that I put in the margin on page 2 for Carson, which is Dick Giordano's inking lesson to Marshall Rogers, which Marshall Rogers passed on to me. And the two brush lines that you see on the left, between this brush line and the one next to it, there is little contrast. And then if you look at the two brush lines to the right of that, between this brush line and the one next to it, there's a lot of contrast. So basically, that's what I'm saying to Carson is, you're almost there, kid. You're as close to Al Williamson as anybody that we've ever had in the field, and that's really the only thing that you need to understand. So I've taken a brush and added some thick brush lines to the glove hand that represents Carson in the story, and just said, do exactly what you've been doing, but when the page is done, lay in a handful of beefy brush lines. It'll give your work the middle distance eye candy quality you've been missing, which is exactly what you're looking at on the screen right now. It's you're not reading a comic book, you're looking at it in the middle distance, and big beefy brush lines, just a handful of them, really make all the difference. So it looks like I'm going to be doing basically specialty lettering sound effects on You Don't Know Jack number 1 and 2. And you can see here, this is part of a sight gag making a joke about Carson taking pictures of Jack and suggesting that he was using a disposable camera, which is why it says wind, wind, click. Basically, I was just going to do 2 winds so that Sean can get the spacing right, and then go wind, 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 click, wind, 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 click, and that actually led to another good gag on that page. So pleased with how that came out. And that little squiggly worm over there on the right there, that's a Carson balloon tail. All of these done at 250% of the original size. And for Grandpa, that's about how big we have to go before he's confident that it still looks like it's supposed to. And same thing with doing titles on the You Don't Know Jack stories. This is one called The Purple Towel Caper, and guaranteed to offend a bunch of people, I think. But for me, thought-provoking. So there you go. In answer to your question, how's the wrist doing, and what have I been able to do since I did Tim F's hardcover number 1 drawing? You're looking at it right here. So Grandpa's going to get back to work now pretty soon. Okay, and that will do it for weekly update for November 10th. Hope to see a bunch of it back here next week for the weekly update for November 17th. And thanks very much again to everybody for their support on Kickstarter. Always a big surprise, and always a pleasant surprise.